is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program, the last of our live broadcast big programs. Lots to get to, lots to talk about, memories, thoughts, all kinds of stuff. And hey, George Santos was expelled from Congress for having 68 fewer felony indictments than Donald Trump. It's a start of a day. It is a start of a day. But, today a little personal, because we're in a transition moment. And, looking forward to the new year, looking forward to a new beginning, to growing in our new space over at Free Speech TV. And I'm excited about it, but it harkens back for me to 2010. I was in this moment in 2010 because, look, I had been in the trucking industry for a whole bunch of years. I didn't know that the company that I had worked for at the time, I didn't think they were going to make it to the new year. They were in a whole bunch of financial trouble. Bankruptcy was looming. There was all kinds of stuff. And, I started thinking about this today as yellow freight is in the news. And again, I don't know how many lives this cat might have, but maybe a way to resurrect yellow freight from the ashes of bankruptcy. Now, I thought about this, back in 2003, I was working for a company called Roadway Express. Roadway Express was profitable. They were free of debt. They basically owned everything, old school kind of business principles. You buy equipment, you use it until you cannot use it any longer. You buy your terminals, you buy your stuff, you invest in your people. In fact, Roadway used to brag about the fact that they had a 1% turnover rate of their unionized workforce. They had dedicated people who stayed. And that really was across the industry. You got one of those jobs like I did in the early 90s and thought, hey, this is going to be where I do my time. And in 2003, that all got shaken up because Yellow ended up the number 2 carrier in the country, buying Roadway Express, the number 1 company, for about $1.1 billion. It was a hostile takeover. And the idea was we're going to consolidate, have a super union company and have leverage over the entire industry. In 2005, they went out and they acquired USF, another freight company, for $1.47 billion. They were on an acquisition spree and put themselves heavily in debt. 2006, they changed their names because here's the weird thing. It turned out that people were very brand specific. If you shipped with Yellow, you didn't ship with Roadway. If you shipped with Roadway, you didn't ship with Yellow. And city drivers would go into customers, docks and go, hey, get that Yellow trailer out of here, or get that Roadway. I don't ship with them. And they had a lot of problems. They had a lot of problems with the synergy part of this. And they struggled, and they really did, and they were heavily in debt. They changed their name in 2006 to YRC Worldwide. They went on more of a spending spree in 2007, bought a Chinese logistics company, all kinds of stuff. They were going to make a super company out of all of this. And, truth be told, may have worked. Might have worked had it not been for the Bush collapse of 2008, which was an absolutely killer, because they were massively in debt. Whereas Roadway was never in really that much debt. And when recessions hit, they always thrived because they didn't have overcapacity. They packed trailers to you couldn't get anything more in it. And what you had was now a bloated company. You had all of this redundancy that they couldn't figure out how to integrate. And understand, they bought the company in 2003, didn't really put the two companies really together until March of 2009. And it nearly led to their bankruptcy in 2009, which eventually is what led me at the end of 2010 to look elsewhere. Because in early 2009, we as employees, as Teamster members, were asked to take a 10% pay cut. Got to take a pay cut. Concessions. Company's in trouble. Save us. And in exchange for that, we'll give you 15% of the company. The membership voted on it, went for it. couple months later, they came back and said, well, hey, that wasn't enough. We need more. They got another 5% and 18-month pause in pension contributions just to get done. Now, again, I left at the end of 2010 seeing the writing on the wall. I didn't think they'd make it to the new year. So 13 years later, they finally filed bankruptcy. Now, what's weird is, all during this period, the company was making money. They had a long-time dedicated workforce. They had, good solid accounts. Problem, criminally mismanaged. And what's interesting is you hear management talk about, it's the union workers. No, criminally mismanaged. This was a profitable company that they destroyed. And understand, Yellow was a company in massive debt when they took on even more debt. And what they did is they ended up, I put it this way, it's like you buy someone's house and then you sell off all of their furniture to pay your bills. You sell off then the shed in the back and then the driveway. They were basically selling everything off just to service the massive debt that they took on. And look, I get the idea at the start that you consolidate and you take on more market share. I don't know why the government allowed it to happen. I thought it was a mistake back then. But it was allowed to happen. And it's now cost thousands of people their livelihoods. And over the years, again, thousands of workers gave up massive concessions. When you stop and think about it, Yellow was able to claw back at least a decade of wage increases. They destroyed pension security. They didn't get the health care that they wanted to destroy too. And you look at this and you go, this whole story is corporate greed and corporate mismanagement, horrible mismanagement. And now they've filed bankruptcy. And now there's a moment where, what do you do with the remnants of the company? They filed bankruptcy in Delaware, obviously. And their plan is to sell off all of the terminals and the assets. And so why? So they can raise money for themselves. They can pocket money for themselves. Because understand, just before they filed bankruptcy, according to Bloomberg News, the executives paid themselves $4.6 million in bonuses. And I know, they had to get the bite at the apple before they filed bankruptcy, because in 2005, Congress said, no, you can't do that anymore. No. So, of course, before the bankruptcy, they're going to line their pockets. But it got me thinking about, when I first started in the industry in the late 80s, and you saw a lot of bankruptcies happen. And the model had been, and the joke among the workforce was, whenever you saw them start painting things, like the lunchroom or painting the lines in the parking lot or bringing in new equipment or, fixing things that, the bathrooms, for instance, when you saw upgrades happen, pack your stuff because they're probably going to file bankruptcy. And in talking with some of the people who I know who were there, you started to see new equipment rolling in. You started to see capital improvements. You started to see stuff because what they understood is, and this is what the bankruptcy laws allow for, I guess, all of that stuff gets just written off. It's gone. Whoever did those services, you're out of luck. Sorry, buddy. Better luck next time. And then they get to sell off all those assets. So we're in a moment right now where the alternatives are break this company up even further into smaller pieces, sell off every truck, trailer, dolly, every dock, every shop, tool, everything. Sell it all off, liquidate, let the vultures come in and pick the bones. Or, and this is incredible, or you allow our friend Sarah Riggs, Amico, and her company, Jack Cooper, to buy it up and put it back into operation, which I got to tell you has never been done, at least not that I can find, that a company went completely, a trucking company went completely kaput. They shut down operations. They fired all the people. They can't even find the keys to the trucks at this point. And then someone came in and swooped in and said, hey, I want to make this a company that does great work, but hires people and gives them good jobs. I can't believe, and this is one of these moments where I go, I cannot believe that it's even a question. But weirdly enough, because of the $700 million that the Trump administration gave to Yellow back during the Trump years, the loan that came out of that, and the repayment schedule, there's some question whether legally our government can let those payments go for a little bit longer down the road. They're due now. Sarah Riggs Amico and her folks want a couple of years to get some cushion to be able to make those payments. Not saying to forgive it, but give it a little time for us to get back in operation and making some revenue so we can pay it back. Also, you've got the pension fund, the Teamsters pension fund going, well, I don't know that we can, because of the law, accept less than we might be able to get out of bankruptcy, which you go, well, where in the bankruptcy line are you? Workers generally fall to the bottom. So there's a lot of stuff here where you just go, are our rules so screwed up that they are really that stacked against working people? Against job creators like Sarah who want to make sure that there are good family-sustaining wages for workers? It's quite remarkable to me. And today on the program, we're going to talk with Sarah and find out how we can help. I mean, for me, if the last thing I can do is figure out a way to help to get, 10, 15, 20,000 of my Teamster brothers and sisters back to work, that's what we have to do. And I think Sarah's got a plan that will help move in that direction. And I'm sure she's got some ideas on what we can do. But it's amazing to me how horrible mismanagement always trickles down to the employees getting the short end of the stick. But maybe this time, just once, maybe the little guy comes out somewhat, not ahead, but somewhat close. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know how the other day I talked about Republican message discipline? This is what I was talking about. This is a perfect example of Republicans sticking to the message. You may remember hearing about Joni Ernst, the senator from Iowa who evidently was choking and may have choked to death had it not been for Rand Paul, who is, I guess he's something of a doctor, ophthalmologist, I think, but performed the Heimlich maneuver and saved her life, expelled whatever was in her throat and saved her. Well, she tweets out, can't help but choke on the woke policies Dems are forcing down our throats. Thanks, Dr. Rand Paul. So that woke chicken that she had evidently was choking her. Oh, message discipline. Let's go to the phones. Got Steve on line one. Steve, how are you today?
Yes, I'm fine. And let me begin by saying, great show. I, like a lot of other people, have really come to appreciate it. It's an important voice out there. And the WCPT here in Chicago, we have a lot of diverse voices, but, there was no one like yourself. And people talking about kitchen table issues, about labor, and that's really important because it really is the core of the Democratic Party. And it's how you appeal to people, and it's what wins elections. I know people like to think that foreign policy issues and social issues and so many other things win elections. In the end, as James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. People vote their bottom line. Can they pay their rent? Can they buy the groceries? Can they pay their bills and so forth? And I'm glad that you talk about those kinds of things. Having said that, I couldn't agree with you more with regard to what's going on, what's been going on in this country with regard to our economic system. Yeah, the right in this country took advantage of the fact that coming out of COVID, we had supply chain short issues. We had issues with there was going to be inflation, obviously, as more money was chasing fewer goods. But make no mistake, that explains part of what inflation was. Another bigger part, in many cases, was simply price gouging.
Yep.
Kimberly Clark, in a 3-month period, between April and June, raised prices by 6% on Huggies diapers. So just to be clear, I'm not talking about things like something that you don't need, like new earbuds or something to listen to your favorite stuff. These are diapers. So they raised, in 3 months, the cost of these things by 6% during a time when their costs went down $75 million to actually produce them. So, yeah, the only thing that you can explain that with is to say, they knew full well that Americans have gotten used to inflation being at significant levels. And, hey, if we can just pile onto that, no one will bother to look into it. And that, unfortunately, is what's happened. And you were absolutely right with regard to, what happened beginning in the 1970s and really took off and went on steroids in the 80s and 90s, takeovers and mergers and so forth. And for decades, we had built this illusion that somehow if you had a good job and you were in a good union and you had a good contract, you were set. Well, nobody read the fine print because it turns out that if it was subject to a hostile takeover or the company declared bankruptcy because they were mismanaged and so forth. Well, guess what? What you were expecting in terms of a pension may be cut in half. The new owners are obligated to meet perhaps 50% of the pension obligation in terms of the contract in the event that something like this happens, and that's it. That will buy them out for 50 cents on the dollar. I don't know about you, but if your plans for retirement are cut in half in terms of what you're going to be living off of, that might be a problem. And this idea that things just get resolved at some point, that we had a labor movement in the early part of the 20th century and then the middle part of the 20th century, and that everything was solved, everything was resolved. No, these people do not sleep. The ownership class doesn't sleep. Instead, they said to themselves, we're going to organize and we're going to claw back those things that we lost. And we're going to undermine the things that they gained in terms of labor laws and protections and all of these other things that people had come to expect. And that's why you don't have very many people with pensions any longer. Yeah, you want to retire? Well, we've got a 401k plan, but yeah, we're not that defined pension thing. No, we're not going to do that. And in terms of real income, basically we're stagnant. From 1980 until today, the average household income hasn't moved in terms of real earnings. Now the people at the top 10% moved nicely. The people in the top 1% hugely. The people in the top 10th of 1% extraordinarily well during that period of time. So and I can't speak for everyone. I'm not a socialist. I don't want to seize Elon Musk's company or Google or Microsoft or Apple or anything else. But I just think that if you make a certain amount of money, you should pay a little bit more because you've benefited more from what this society has to offer. Yep. And to quote Bill Gates, if I had been born in Bangladesh, this wouldn't have worked. The reason that I was able to make so much money was because we sold a product that allowed people to utilize computers and go online, which is what they wanted to do with their computers. That's what most people do. And the only way that was possible was because of the infrastructure that was in place long before I was born. And that made it possible. Yep. So again, we're just asking you to pay a little bit more. And Warren Buffett famously denoted, I'm paying less of a percentage of what I made last year than my secretary, and that's problematic to say the least.
Absolutely, right there with you, Steve. Appreciate the call, buddy. Good talking to you.
Take care.
Thank you, and I appreciate the kind words. But to his point, CEO compensation from 1978 until I think it was 2019, up 940%. That of the worker, the average typical worker, up 12%. And you go, how is that? How is that good? How is that helpful? And look, I go back to my example of Yellow Freight. The CEOs, they didn't take pay cuts. The CEOs didn't see their wages diminished, but they continually went back to the workforce and said, "Hey, hand out. We need concessions. We need help. We need to cut into your pension. We need to cut into your wages, your standard of living." And And what's frustrating and angering is that's not the only time this has happened. We see it time and time again. And as I've said, my hope is that we as working people, that we just, say enough is enough already. And we do come back together like my grandparents' generation did. They didn't always agree on everything. But the important stuff, what you put on the table, what comes in that keeps a roof over people's heads, that they were pretty unified on. Fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, opportunities for their children, all on the same line. So, that's to me where I'm hoping this works. And I appreciate Steve's comments about this program being one of the few that talks about the stuff that we do, because I think this is the important stuff. I say all the time, we got to start fighting for things that make our lives better and stop fighting over nonsense. We got to start getting back to what is going to make society and our opportunities and our families stronger and better, as opposed to just the craziness that we've been saddled with. It's time. And, I look at our mainstream corporate controlled media, of which I'm hoping we can, when we move to free speech TV, have an opportunity to get a message to a wider audience. I'm hoping that we do some things that are going to give us some really good chances to interact. And with all the new technology, we're not going away. And I want our listeners here on stations that across the country to go, hey, look, we want to hear from you. I want to hear folks email me. I want to hear. I can't hear you email, but I want people to email. I want people to pay attention. Let's quick go to the phones, and I got Johnny on line 2. Johnny, how are we doing today, Johnny?
Real good now. I can hear you. I can hear you swell on my fancy smartphone, which I thought wasn't too smart a few days ago, but you're coming in loud.
Outstanding. What's on your mind, brother?
And well, two things. I'm glad to hear that you're expanding your program on Free Speech TV with the coming days or weeks. That's good. With mornings and afternoons. That's really good because, as I was telling your call screener, the labor message has to go out to this country. It's not being done so, and we desperately need that. And you're the guy to do it. Because you're engaging, you're inspired and inspiring, and I just want you to know that it feels good when I tune into you and I hear and see your message. And by the way, when the earlier caller mentioned the movie Gordon Gekko, that's true. This problem is the art is in the eye of the beholder. So what the artist intends is not always the outcome when it's consumed on the other side, the communication being what it is. And here's a good case in point. That World War II movie that, what's his name? The guy who did the, what's that actor's name now? I'm drawing a blank. My 64-year-old mind is betraying me. Saving Private Ryan.
Okay.
Who's the lead in that?
Tom Hanks.
Who's the lead in second? Tom Hanks, right. Tom Hanks. So, you think that Tom Hanks should feel regret for his career as he thinks that because Private Ryan might be misinterpreted by people as a pro-war movie that he should not have done that? No, because there are lots of people who saw that movie and they took the correct message, which is war is hell, it's ugly, and we should do everything to resist it. Maybe that's why so many young people, are resisting joining up for the armed forces.
I'm with you, Johnny. I appreciate the call, buddy. Thanks so much. I got to take a quick break here. Thank you for the kind words. Really, I appreciate it. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the Anaconda Copper Company instituted its rustling card system at its mines in Butte, Montana. The company used the rustling cards in 2 ways. First, as a work permit, and then as a way to keep track of miners. A miner looking for work would first have to apply for a card. Miners had to present information about citizenship status, English literacy skills, work history, and 2 years of employer references. Once the card was approved, the miners would then be allowed to apply for work. The Butte Miners Union charged that it was the company's way of blacklisting those who had quit, been fired, or known as union militants. By 1917, the Metal Mine Workers Union and the IWW added that the company was looking to nip agitation in the bud. they alleged employers were holding onto cards or denying them altogether for no reason. According to historian Paul Brissenden, both unions maintained the company was looking to, quote, punish those who were at one time active in the socialist administration of Butte Mayor Louis J. Duncan, to prevent the Socialist Party from again securing a foothold in Butte, to strengthen the hands of the more conservative unions, and to curb the industrial unionism of the IWW and Metal Mine Workers Union. The company asserted its right to keep out its enemies out of the mines, alleging they presented a danger to mine safety. But the unions shot back, stating the blacklist meant the hiring of untrained, inexperienced workers who presented the real danger. Brissenden notes that many union radicals continued to work in the mines despite the card system. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
In one of their satirical songs, the Austin Lounge Lizards lampooned the ridiculous bigotry of some Christian factions, singing, "Jesus loves me, but he can't stand you." That could be the bellicose anthem of a quasi-religious Republican front group with a very sweet-sounding name, Moms for Liberty. Far from sweet, however, these moms are funded by rich Republicans to be ground troops in the party's culture wars. Essentially, an anti-liberty campaign against people, books, teachers, and ideas they don't like. In the last few years, squads of these moms have turned into political hate groups, persecuting small-town school board members by baselessly accusing them of conspiring to indoctrinate children with pornography, hatred of white people, and liberal thinking. Having stirred up dust devils of division and fear, the momsters ran candidates in local board elections this fall, hoping to take over public schools. But they miscalculated on an essential political reality. Most Americans are not right-wingers, bigots, or Christian nationalists. The group had counted on surprising voters in what are usually low-visibility, low-turnout races. But the extremists were the ones surprised by an aggressive voter pushback against their scheme. Indeed, various surveys show that the GOP's mom wing lost about 80% of its races across the country, even in major swing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. For example, in the very conservative school district of Penridge, Pennsylvania, 5 far-right Republican incumbents were up for re-election. All 5 were swept out, turning the Penridge School Board blue for the first time in years. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help push back against right-wing politicizers of your school district, contact campaignsharedfuture.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's rare, in fact, it's unprecedented, that I would quote Senator Josh Hawley in any way, shape, or form. But the senator wrote a letter saying, hey, yellow freight, it's a common sense step to keep yellow trucks on the road and keep its workforce gainfully employed. Now, these are union workers that he's saying, it's common sense that you get those trucks back on the road and those union jobs back in place. Rare, in fact, unprecedented for me to ever say something about Josh Hawley that doesn't, this is a positive thing. It tells me that there's hope in this moment. And here to share some thoughts on how, I got to tell you, a historic way, I've seen a lot of trucking companies go out throughout my years. I've never seen one come back from the dead. But if anyone can do it, it's going to be my next guest, who is the executive chairperson of Jack Cooper. They are the country's largest auto carrier corporation. Sarah Riggs-Amico, I appreciate you taking time for us.
It's great to be with you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So, as I said, I never quote Josh Hawley, but it is common sense. It does make sense that if someone can make a go of it, if someone has a plan that is workable to put people back to work, to create jobs that are going to be family-sustaining jobs and save a company, we should be doing that, no?
That's right. And look, I think what it tells you is this isn't a political issue. This is about the jobs. The one thing that's still sacred, we can all agree on across the political spectrum, is the dignity of a good paying job and what that means for families, particularly at this time of the year.
Now, before we get into all the details and stuff, there's some legalities here, as I understand. The Treasury Department, with this $700 million loan that Trump gave them, that I argue they squandered and criminally mismanaged, but that's a whole argument for another day outside of your purview, I'm sure. What's it going to take to get them to be able to maybe restructure, to move that around? Let's start there.
Yeah, so look, I think, first of all, I went to business school and not law school, so I wouldn't have to answer technical legal questions that way. But I will say that the CARES Act loan that was extended to Yellow, whether or not you agree it was made correctly, it was made with the intent of protecting and preserving jobs. And right now, we are bringing forward with Next Century Logistics what is the only going concern bid that would bring back tens of thousands of jobs for people who lost their paycheck when Yellow closed its doors.
Now, one of the things that I found that was, I guess, troubling to me, because your bid for Yellow to take this didn't go to a bankruptcy court, didn't go to the government agency. It actually went to the people who destroyed this company, which seems really kind of weird to me. Why did you, I don't know if this is a strategic thing, I don't know if it's a legal thing, but why on God's green earth would you have to go through the people who screwed this up?
Yeah, well, the process in Chapter 11, the way that it works is the management and the company has a lot of say, as do, of course, the debtor in possession or DIP lenders. They've got a lot of say about how this goes forward. And so our effort is not to weigh into the politics of how they got there, but to give the company a lifeline to exit and bring back those jobs. And by the way, not just bring back 20,000 jobs or more, but also to relieve pressure on America's battered supply chains. We're still coming out of what's been a really difficult period, as you know, in the supply chain universe. Customers, when Yellow closed its door, 9% of the LTL capacity in the United States shut down with it. Customers took double-digit price increases. They found themselves scrambling to ship the products Americans love. And we all know that those transportation costs are a major driver of prices for consumers and inflation in our economy. So there's a lot at stake here that I think affects people even outside of the transportation and trucking space.
Now, you said a moment ago they filed, I guess it's Chapter 11 bankruptcy, right?
That's correct.
That's not Chapter 7. Chapter 11, as I understand, and again, I'm not a legal expert, and I'll pretend to play one on TV or radio, but isn't that reorganization? Isn't that the intent of, hey, we're gonna reinvent the widget and keep it moving, not destroy it and sell it off in pieces, which I guess is supposed to start happening any moment now.
Yes, that's correct. So a Chapter 11 gives a company a chance to restart and to restart profitably, to protect and preserve jobs and the ongoing operation of a business. It's a tool that, when used correctly, can give people a fresh start. And it means a lot, not just to the companies and their customers, but of course to workers as well, particularly in union companies. And particularly in these days where those jobs with great wages and great benefits and the dignity of collective bargaining rights are increasingly difficult to find in many places. So, it is puzzling to me that there weren't more options for this business to be saved. And that's exactly why we jumped in. So we're following the process. We are presenting a fully funded bid. We are asking the United States Treasury and the unsecured creditors to help us revive this business. And we're also being very clear that we are the only option to do that. In every other instance, if our bid fails, this company will be liquidated and sold off for parts. And the 28,000 jobs that disappeared when Yellow closed its doors will never come back. And to me, as you and I have talked over the years, That's always been the core at why I do what I do. We work exclusively for the last 15 years in restructuring Teamster trucking companies, saving Teamster trucking jobs, doing what everybody else thought was impossible. Remember, we got into the auto hauler business when, let's see, 2008 and 2009. We bought Jack Cooper a month before GM and Chrysler bankruptcies. So we understand how to do a white knuckle operator's turnaround. This is not financial engineering. We're not coming in to just simply convert debt into equity. We are coming in to fundamentally restart the operation of this business in a way that increases the level of service to its customers, increases wages and pension contributions to its union workers, and saves and protects thousands and thousands of jobs. That's a worthy cause. That's something I want to be a part of, and that's the reason we've done everything we've done in the trucking industry.
No, and you've done incredible stuff. And look, my hope is that you're able to pull this off, because I know, I know hundreds of people who have been affected by this, personally. Like I said, the place that I work, there's like I think there's like 800 people there who lost their jobs in this closure, and to see vultures come in and pick the bones of what was a company that did provide good family sustaining wage jobs is really painful. But you mentioned something there a second ago. You're not getting into this for the whole debt for equity thing. How much of that plays into the situation we're in? Because I said, look, the reality is this company was very profitable. They were making money. How did they I know they took on a lot of debt, but there were years that they did really well. I'm arguing criminal mismanagement on the highest levels, which is why I find it very odd that the guy who drove it into bankruptcy is the restructuring officer.
Yeah, look, bankruptcy, for folks that don't work in turnarounds and restructuring, as I have for the past decade and a half, it is not a logical place. It's not the place that functions the way you think it does. There are plenty of people who make an awful lot of money in bankruptcy, and they're usually the advisors that are helping take these companies through. But that's also necessary to navigate the process. Chapter 11 does allow the executives prior to the filing to control the process, and that's fine. I mean, the hope is that they're doing the best they can to maximize the recovery of the estate and give the company fair and full consideration of any opportunities to have a plan of reorganization where they can restart the business and protect those and preserve those jobs. And I think that's really the thing to watch for here. So for you've got a lot of drivers, a lot of members that listen to your show, Rick. I think if they want to see Yellow make a comeback, they should be sharing their story. They should take to Twitter. They should take to Facebook. They should call into shows. They should write to their congressional representatives or senators and say why this matters to their family. All jobs in trucking, as you know, are not created equal. Union health, welfare, and pension matters. My family, as you know, has been on Team Care, Teamster Healthcare. This is a great way to protect the kind of jobs that talking heads are usually only talking about, but never actually investing in creating. And what we have right now, I think, is extraordinary. You have, Josh Hawley and Senator Marshall from Kansas, and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Sherrod Brown and Amy Klobuchar. I mean, look at the coalition of people from across the political spectrum who've raised their hand and said, guys, hold on a minute. We passed the CARES Act to help protect and preserve jobs. We passed these acts, the American Rescue Plan. We wanted to make these loans and support these businesses through extraordinary times during the pandemic, because we understand what the dignity of that good paying job means to those families. And that is utterly apolitical. It's all about what's best for working families in this country. And I think that's something worth fighting for. I mean, look, we as you know, we love these kind of stories. My family and I have come into companies where everyone else has given up. And that's exactly what's happened with Yellow. But this is something worth fighting for. 28,000 people who lost their paychecks are worth fighting for. Jobs that put health care and retirement and pensions for families are worth fighting for. And the fact that we were able to do that in partnership with the union Look at what you've got here. This is the kind of story this country needs right now. We've got Republicans and Democrats on the same page. We've got management and labor on the same page, because in the end, we all want the same thing, which is for our kids to have more opportunity and more financial stability than we have.
No, this is exactly what I say all the time. If we're going to reunite this country, we need to reunionize it. And you're doing a huge part and a huge service in getting that message out. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Riggs Amico. She's the executive chairwoman with Jack Cooper, the nation's largest auto hauling company and a Teamster company at that. Let me ask you about the Teamsters' response in this, because look, I went back through the whole Yellow acquisition of Roadway, and when they bought up New Penn and Holland and all of this, and the debt they took on, and ultimately the massive concessions that workers gave, a tax to their pensions, all kinds of stuff. And I'm curious, the relationship between you and the Teamsters, I know have been very good in your companies. What kind of actions, what kind of words, what kind of things are going on with you with this deal? Are they enthusiastic about this? Are there hiccups? What's going on?
I think the best place to start any relationship, whether you're talking about your labor union or whether you're talking about your kids or your spouse or your friends, is honest communication. And so the very first thing that we did is sit down and say, what would it look like to try to save this business? It couldn't operate the same way that it was operating. You named a lot of marquee. Yellow is a venerated brand that a lot of people have extraordinary affection for, particularly in transportation and logistics. And they had some marquee acquisitions. You mentioned New Penn, you mentioned Holland, Redaway. These were brands that have incredible brand equity in the market and have a lot of love amongst the industry, but they were never really fully integrated. And that's not my opinion. We know that because Yellow, prior to filing for bankruptcy, was pushing a plan that they called One Yellow, which was trying to better integrate those operating companies. So the first thing that we did was have an honest dialogue about how would we get to a more efficient operating network footprint. How do you improve your customer service, right? At the end of the day, this is a multi-channel business. In LTL, you have your local channel, you've got your 3PL channel, you've got your central sort of HQ decision makers for the corporate accounts, the big ones. You're talking about 150,000 or more customers across the portfolio of revenue. You've got to think very strategically about how each of those channels can be best served as you start to reanimate this business. And I think that open communication and really specifically talking about how do we get the drivers and the dock workers and the union members in on the dialogue. If something's not working, how do we hear about it and start to fix it immediately instead of waiting for it to fester and blow up? And I think we were lucky to have the credibility to do that with the union, but also it's trust on our part too. We trust that they're going to honor their word, and they trust that we will. And trust and good communication is the beginning of any relationship. And then I think as a manager, you really have to talk to everyone in your business, no matter if they're in the C-suite or if they sit at the front desk and sign in guests. The dignity of that job is important, or you wouldn't have a paycheck going to them. And what that means and what they contribute, and recognizing and acknowledging that, lifting up that work, I think is incredibly important. It's important that we respect that every one of these roles is needed to have a successful customer experience, to have sustainable, good paying jobs with great benefits, and have a company that, God willing, can outlast all of our lifetimes. I mean, that's really the goal here, right? Is to build something that outlasts us. And all we're asking is for people to consider that it doesn't have to end in a fiery liquidation of a 100-year-old company that employed 28,000 people. There's a chance to save this. It doesn't have to end that way. It can end with, I'm a Methodist, as you know, a good resurrection story, and 'tis the season. So I hope that people will think about that we've got a chance to tell tens of thousands of working families in this country headed into the holidays, just give us a minute. We're going to get this back, and those health, welfare, pension, and good union jobs are coming back your way. And for customers, choice, price relief, better service, and this brand that everyone loved so much can be revived. And if we do that, that would be something. I mean, that's a Christmas miracle for everyone.
That's a Hallmark movie right there.
Amen.
If only more CEOs thought like you do, and I got to tell you, I am pulling for you. Last question I've got for you: what can I do to help? What can our listeners do to help? What can like I said, former employees, what should they be doing? Who should we be yelling at? Let's start with that.
Well, I'm going to say probably the best thing you can do is raise your hand and your voice and tell your story. So if you worked for Yellow, if you put your kids through school on Yellow, if you put your kids in braces through Yellow, if you paid your way through college interning at Yellow, if you got your first job out of college at Yellow, tell people what that meant to you. Tell people why these jobs matter. Let's not let this get lost in a room where a lot of times working families aren't represented, right? Bankruptcy, by the time you get to that point, it's a lot of very technical, legal, and financial advisors. But at the heart of all of this, at the heart of every good business deal, it's about the people. At the heart of every good business, every good product, it's about the people. So people should tell their story. Tell it, what does Yellow mean to you? Why do you think these jobs should be saved? And if you're the kind of person that has the willingness and time to write to your congressional representatives, write to your senators, do so and tell them why. Because in the end, this is a massive responsibility for those of us that want to try to revive those jobs in this company. We're going to need all the support we can get, but we're also going to need to remember the responsibility we're agreeing to take on. And as you know, in my family, that's almost a sacred responsibility. I went into business because the way I was raised was that creating a way for someone else to provide for their family was the noblest thing you could do for others. And that's just the way we were raised. I remember when my dad lost my job when I was young. He remembers when they almost lost their house because his dad lost his job, and it was saved by getting a custodial role in a UAW General Motors assembly plant just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. So we know what that feels like. As you know, we had to take Jack Cooper through a Chapter 11 restructuring in 2019. It was painful, but we protected every union job, everyone's retirement, everyone's health care, their union, their seniority, and we took it out of our hide to go through that restructuring. So for me, this is the ball game. This is why we do what we do. I hope your listeners will tell people their story. I hope that they'll contact, if they have a friend who used to drive for Yellow or for another company who's looking to come back, have them speak up, have them reach out, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. We want to hear from you. We want people to see the face of these jobs and understand the stakes.
There you go, Sarah. I appreciate the time. I got to tell you, I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of what you're trying to do, and I wish you the absolute best. And like I've said, anything I can do to help on this front, I am at your disposal. But thanks for the time.
You're very kind. Thanks so much for having me, Rick.
Sarah Riggs Amico, Executive Chairwoman of Jack Cooper. I got to tell you, again, I go back to this, just remarkable. What a remarkable woman. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1966. That was the day that the registered nurses of the Youngstown General Duty Nurses Association walked out of their jobs. Nursing could be a grueling profession, with long hours of physical labor for low pay. In Youngstown, the nurses were frustrated because there were inconsistencies in pay. Some recently hired nurses made more than those who had been working for years. Part-time nurses did not receive the same wage increases as full-time employees. They also did not feel that they had enough say in delivering quality care for their patients. When they asked to meet with the hospital's executive director to discuss their concerns, the nurses were rebuffed. They then contacted the Ohio Nurses Association union and asked for help. Youngstown was a steel town, a union town, and the nurses were ready to join in the local labor movement. At first, the Youngstown Hospital Association refused to bargain with the union. But when the nurses threatened to walk out, negotiations began. After 2 months of talking at the bargaining table, major issues remained unsettled, including pay and union recognition. Fed up, the nurses called for a mass resignation. 305 of the 433 nurses turned in their resignations. 2/3 of them were part-time nurses. They formed informational picket lines outside the hospitals. A federal mediator was brought in to settle the dispute. In the end, the nurses won significant gains. They received a more than 25% raise over 2 years. A grievance procedure was established for the first time, but most importantly, the union gained recognition and the right to bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions for the nurses and their patients. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Sarah's point, I give the LTL industry and all the companies that I worked for, Roadway Express, which eventually, morphed into Yellow, the credit for, lifting me out of poverty and giving me the opportunity to do this little program. And a lot of the things that we've been able to do has been because of that union job. So I hope people will share their thoughts and stories. Let's quick go to the phones. I got Alice on line 2. Alice, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
It's sad to think that tonight's the last night of the radio show. But the reason why I wanted to remind you that you need to let us know what time the new show is going to be on starting Monday.
Well,
so
Monday, the new show, the show is going to be 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time on Monday through Friday, as it is. In the new year, we're going to be moving to an afternoon slot with a replay later in the evening. That's where we are right now.
Okay, and are we going to have the ability to call in? And is it going to be 1 hour or 2 hours? And
it's going to be a 1 hour recorded program. We were planning on doing some Facebook Live stuff with free speech. I want to keep some interactivity. I want to be able to have people, talk with us. The thought maybe, a couple of nights a week after the show, maybe opening up on their Facebook Live, of doing things like that. But for right now, our goal is to do the best 1 hour TV program on the airwaves.
Okay, and so that's Facebook. So are you going to still do Twitter or no?
Yeah, I'm still doing Twitter. We're not going to broadcast over Twitter. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that free speech is where our content is, and that they're the ones pushing it out. We've had some technical issues, and I'm just going to leave that stuff to the professionals now.
Okay, great. So now that we've got that out there, I guess we'll see you come Monday.
Yes, absolutely. Alice,
have a good one.
I appreciate you. Thanks so much. Yeah. I mean, this is a bittersweet moment. I mean, the reality is I'm looking into the new year with great hope for the opportunities that we're going to be able to take on, having not to have to be sitting in this chair every night at 9 o'clock. But it's 18 years of live radio that I'm going to miss, and people like Alice and folks who interact with us all the time. I appreciate every one of you. And I want to hear from you. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast, and I would suggest maybe subscribe to the podcast, because we're going to do some really interesting things with that in the new year as well. Back after this.
So really this story highlights the vulnerability of the global south in a scenario of global warming.
Unprecedented heat waves set all-time high national temperature records in Brazil and South Africa. Commercial jet crosses the Atlantic powered by waste, fat, and sugar, not fossil fuels. Plus,
as I've said for a long time, when I think climate, and I mean this sincerely, I think jobs.
President Biden touts booming clean energy economy in MAGA Republicans' district.
Boberts?
Yep.
Did he go to the theater with her?
No.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
They do want to take away the gas stoves, and in fact, they are taking away the gas stoves.
Why do they want to ban gas stoves?
Because they hate us. They hate humans. They hate joyfulness. They hate pies. They hate good food. They want us all to be miserable. They want us to suffer because they're all miserable. They want all of America to be as miserable and unhappy and unloved as they are. And we're just not going to go along with it.
They're not taking away the gas stoves. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, Fox News just can't give it up, can they?
No, they can't.
Oh, they're taking away your gas stoves, your refrigerators, your washers, your dryers, everything you love about life. Anyway, what do you have for us that's rooted in reality, Desi Doyen?
Well, first, last week, Brazil set a new all-time high national temperature record during a deadly record-shattering heat wave. And it's not even summer yet. The weeks-long extreme heat wave, the fourth to broil the country this year, has withered crops and triggered extreme storms, floods, power outages in major cities, and thousands of wildfires in critical species habitats. The heat was also linked to the death of a fan at a Taylor Swift concert. And South Africa also set a new all-time high national temperature record during the same stretch.
This is not good.
Nope. Also not good in international politics. Far-right climate science deniers have won elections in Argentina and the Netherlands. Argentina's new president, Javier Milei, has called climate change a socialist lie and said companies should be allowed to pollute rivers as much as they want to. In the Netherlands, the extreme far-right party of Geert Wilders won a parliamentary majority, promising to expand oil and gas extraction and pull back on climate and clean energy policies.
Can't we just give these guys jobs on Fox News instead? Why do they have to break everything?
Here in the U.S., a new study calculates that fine particle air pollution from coal-fired power plants was much more deadly than previously thought. Based on updated scientific data, the researchers estimate that since 1999, U.S. coal plant air pollution contributed to nearly 500,000 premature deaths, twice the number previously thought. Coal-related deaths have decreased dramatically as the nation has moved away from coal electricity.
Well, that's a good thing.
In aviation, a 787 jet has become the first commercial airliner to cross the Atlantic Ocean without using any fossil fuels, relying on a fuel blend made primarily from waste fats. Biofuels have substantially lower emissions than conventional jet fuel, but their use is limited by supply constraints and high costs. Some environmental groups called the one-time test flight a good first step in tackling aviation emissions, while the industry develops new technologies like electric batteries, liquid hydrogen, and other fuels to reach zero carbon emissions.
Good.
The Department of Energy released another $300 million in funding from the infrastructure law to boost clean energy manufacturing in former coal towns in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere.
Definitely good.
President Biden authorized the use of the Defense Production Act to expand domestic manufacturing of super-efficient all-electric heat pumps for heating and cooling that are more efficient than traditional heating and air conditioning systems. And finally, the president was in Pueblo, Colorado this week to visit CS Wind, the largest wind turbine manufacturing facility in the world. CS Wind is investing $200 million to expand its factory and hire hundreds more workers thanks to incentives in the Democrats' climate and jobs law, the Inflation Reduction Act. Biden pointed out that the factory expansion directly benefits the district of far-right Republican House member Lauren Boebert, who voted against the IRA and has called it, quote, a massive failure.
All across America, instead of exporting jobs, companies, both foreign and domestic, are creating jobs here in America. Jobs. That's what climate's about. Not only saving lives and saving the environment, but jobs.
Well, no wonder they're furious about it over on Fox News. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Are you
tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said earlier, George Santos was expelled from Congress and only 68 fewer indictments than Donald Trump. So hey, maybe there's hope. But anyway, here to share some thoughts on the expulsion and the 68 fewer indictments. I've asked our good friend Scott Dworkin to come back and talk with us. He's the co-founder of the Democratic Coalition, host of the Dworkin Daily Report. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
How you doing, Rick?
Have not seen you in forever. How are things in your world?
Just writing, focusing on writing. That's what people say, right? We really spent so much time and effort on the Democratic Coalition for so long. We decided to stop doing ads and to start supporting other organizations that had spawned off. And so we're focused on that and making sure that we also are focused on the 2024 election. So we're honed in and reset and ready to go. I definitely have, there's been a cesspool of disinformation and lies and craziness.
And it's going to get worse. Look, I was just reading a story about the Biden administration, ramping up like their legal team to take on all of the AI bots that are going to be attacking them. And look, a lot of the deep fakes that we know are coming.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. The good news is there's only so much information that people can take in. So that is good. And also Democrats will use AI, I'm sure, as well. I would assume that a lot of super PACs will use that to their advantage and it'll even out. But I don't think it'll be used in the sinister way that the Republicans plan on doing it, where they have they'll leak out a fake sex tape of a candidate, where they do something like it's a hidden camera, which is fake, and has a fake video of a candidate saying derogatory things, whether it's bad words or something that's racist, but it's not actually true at all. That's the kind of thing that we're concerned about, is somebody presenting something that would be news that is completely fake, and right. It looks like them, sounds like them, and people think it is them, and the doubt is all people need before an election. And so the vigilance in calling this out and not just rolling our eyes to things. They're still talking about frickin' Pizzagate, which obviously I lived down the street from when that happened. If people don't know, I don't want to go into the conspiracy theory itself, but it was a conspiracy that was led by Mike Flynn's son. He got fired by the Trump administration due to this conspiracy theory that was started with like QAnon people and whatnot, where there was a child-related thing led by Clinton underneath a pizza parlor in the basement of this pizza parlor in D.C. This place did not have a basement, and some guy went in with a shotgun and shot just, I think, in the air, on the ground or something like that, got arrested. So that's Pizzagate. Now they're trying to bring it back up and say it's real because it was led by who, now the right-wing spokesperson on the internet. And so it's a scary world. It's not as, we don't have the people on the social media networks like we did during COVID, fighting this disinformation.
No, Elon Musk has destroyed that.
Yeah, it's definitely, and you see this fire of, I think Walmart just left X. They refused to advertise on it, and now they're like, we're gonna boycott Walmart. I'm like, you're not gonna boycott Walmart. Are you kidding me? Yeah, Trump supporters are gonna boycott Walmart.
No, but here's the thing, and this is where, I'm so I hope Walmart does stay away forever, but I'm so tired of these, we're going to go on a pause, we're not going to advertise. Yeah, they're going to come back, and Musk knows that they're going to probably come back.
Yeah, I mean, Grant Stern, who's the producer of one of my podcasts, he had stood up against Walmart for moving into a Miami neighborhood years ago, and he even became an elected official from that. And I think in a troll or something, the way that we had set up on Spotify, somehow Walmart for one episode was somehow sponsored our show at the bottom, and we were able to remove it the next day, but for that day it was like sponsored by Walmart, and I was like, this is a brilliant troll on their part. Or it's a big accident, and that's what everybody said, is it was just an accident.
No, a lot of times when they put those ads in, it's just a matter of, they fill it whatever inventory they've got, they throw in there. And look, I would take, and I've said this before, I would take Walmart's sponsorship. If Walmart wants to sponsor me, while I say that their workers should be organized, making decent wages with health care and pensions, and that their corporation should pay higher taxes, and that their owners, the Walton family, should be taxed out of existence, if they want to sponsor me with that message, I will be more than happy to take their money.
Yeah, I understand that sentiment.
But here's the thing, and look, I was looking. I'm not a huge Liz Cheney fan. I think she's done the right thing. I think, I'm not going to throw the patriot label. I think she's doing her job. I think she's standing up as a good citizen. But she's saying, look, if Trump's reelected in 2024, it's the end of the republic. Do you believe that, or do you think she's being hyperbolic?
No, I mean, I think that it's a pretty scary world if you have a criminal that would be elected that has promised the fact that they'll go on a spree of vengeance, and so the writings on the wall. He had guardrails last time that we've seen as exposed by the January 6th committee and others. He had people who would say, yeah, okay, and they'd walk away and not do anything with it, or they would agree to talk about it more, and there were people in the way.
Yeah, there are people who didn't want to go to jail.
Sure. Those people won't exist in a next administration.
No, and to your point, you've got this Project 2025 that they're doing, and the application was just, I'm not going to say leaked, but the application was just put out, and it's an interesting deep dive into people's personal lives, just to make sure to vet the right people, that you're sufficiently on board, and maybe not have said something that Donald wouldn't have liked. It's really quite remarkable.
Yeah, it's the old adage of, like, if you agree with Biden out of 6 out of 9 things, then you're a good supporter. If you agree on 9 out of 9 things, then you're insane. And I think that that's the craziness of this, is they really want loyalty above anything else, and they're willing to put aside all of the people who have touched him in different ways and are just going to prison. I know we talked years ago about, Trump and his people are going to go to prison, and I knew back then, I was like, well, if he gets reelected in 2020, I don't know if that's going to happen. Now, because they thought he was going to stay in office no matter what, and he did not, everybody pays the price. I don't understand exactly what people think will happen if they try and do it again, or if they commit more illegal acts, or if they're trying to cover things up. I mean, it's not going to go well for them. You can see a lot of people, like criminals like George Santos, that are in deep trouble because they were so brazen about their crimes. His defense of using donor money to buy really elite clothing or whatever is, well, I wear elite clothing. That's what I wear. And he's saying in that, yeah, I use their money to buy really expensive clothing.
Doesn't everybody?
Because I can, and legally, due to the FEC and how they're constructed. I fundraised and worked in campaigns for 20 years. the way that it works, you can do that, but a lot of times you can purchase clothing and things that you'll need for the campaign trail. People will bought cars, things like that, where it's just a travel car. Like, they'll rent out planes, things along that line. But what he did with this is beyond that. His personal wardrobe, not just work wardrobe, and not just a tux for a special event, tux rental or suit rental or something along those lines. He was literally buying his clothes via his donors' money. He was purchasing OnlyFans subscriptions using donors' money. He was overcharging fraudulently. He was overcharging their accounts. Even Max Miller, the congressman from Ohio, and his mom overcharged them by $5,000 a piece, and he had an FEC complaint against him because of it. So this dude has spent $20,000 on lawyers, $10,000 on these extra donations, and then the extra $10,000 that he had spent, I guess, before that, out $40,000 or so. And I don't feel bad for him. He used to work for Trump, but it is amazing to see. They're all stuck with these frauds. You have McCarthy sticking up for him. You have Mike Johnson sticking up for him. You have you have Scalise and Stefanik. It doesn't make any sense why they would stay on board with these people. But I'll tell you what, Gavin Newsom and his debate with DeSantis, or trouncing, whatever you want to call it, it was the example of how you're supposed to present yourself. That's how Democrats win. You go in there with swagger, you call out a lie, every single one that they tell in real time, and you don't stand down. You talk proudly, you talk positively, but at the same time, you don't take any, what would be the word? You don't take any of their guff.
Right.
Like, you have to be there. He did it on Hannity, on Fox News, and beat the pants off of and the boots off of DeSantis.
And look, here's the thing. I have no idea why DeSantis would want to engage in that. I don't know if he thought that Hannity was going to save him, but DeSantis is a dud. I mean, there's nothing there. Everyone knew no matter how low you put the bar, he was going to take a butt whooping.
Yeah, the poop map. He couldn't get everything. I mean, he was against a black belt and he was a green belt. Like, it was really pathetic to see. But that was the DeSantis that we've always tried to warn people about. Is that it's just a person who is unqualified and unfit for office, worse than Donald Trump. A Donald Trump in a cheaper suit. With less brain power. And it really is dangerous. I mean, you see his allies are being accused of assault now. The Moms for Liberty person, she was involved with, allegedly, with some threesome and things like that. This is someone who attacks gay people, a lot. And she's accused of sleeping with women, and like, this is the hypocrisy that we live with now. But because of their arrogance, they bury themselves. DeSantis, I don't know how you recover from that. I'm sure that if, as long as you have no morals and no care in the world of moving forward and being shamed into a corner like Trump, then you'll be fine, I guess, in this world.
Yeah, but come on, Scott. His campaign was a shattered mess anyway. It was a dumpster fire. He wasn't going anywhere. This was a last-ditch effort to maybe save some face, and he got his face planted. Maybe he should. I don't know. Go away.
I think that he's going Pence's route soon. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, their bet is either Trump or Haley. Haley is a scary candidate against Biden and Harris. And, I think that there's a lot of fake. It's the old Republican way of smiling at you while they're screwing you behind the scenes. And so I think that's the Nikki Haley way. Now, Trump is going to take a different tactic. I don't know if Haley can survive Trump's madness. It seems like she'd be up for it, but I don't think Trump will give her anything or any room. And he's starting to get endorsed by different state parties. Eventually, she's going to be boxed out, if not already. There's not much time left. You know what I mean? Like, this is coming up quick. And I think also, he's used these court cases. Like, he wasn't even going to show up to this New York court case. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to be there. It's all for show because nobody would care if he just went out and did press conferences or speaking or whatever.
No, he needs the victim card. There's no question about it. But what do you say to someone like Chris Cuomo, who's saying he doesn't think there's any greater risk to America with Trump than with Biden?
I can't curse on your show, right?
Yeah, please don't.
Okay. Yeah,
well, look, it's the last day. I mean, what the?
No, I mean, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but that's my example of I'm playing with Mike Rappaport. I was, not that it's changed, but he.
Yeah, I couldn't have Mike Rappaport on the show. No.
No. I don't speak out the left side of my mouth like that. But I would say it's difficult to see anyone giving Trump leeway, but someone who I don't really listen to anyone who's been accused of things that are immoral, and it's not important to hear from someone like Chris Cuomo about his opinion about a politician. It's just not. I don't see that as he's supposed to be a person who's a journalist who has obviously he's had that lean towards his brother, which I get. I understand what he was doing but it seems like it went way too far. I didn't look too far into it.
Yeah.
But that he's got that whole thing, and so he's still trying to dig out from that. So to be able to trend and to be able to get some right-wing support, I think what you'll see is when people get a little desperate for attention or ratings, and they've been abandoned by the left and a lot in the center, they'll go straight to the right. And I think that this is an appeal to that. Nothing less.
That's an interesting take, and one I hadn't thought of. Because everyone needs a job. So last line of question I've got for you, because look, I mean, I've said before, I'm very concerned about 2024. I got a lot of my lefty friends who go, no, it's going to be a cakewalk. Biden's going to get reelected. I'm not so sure. I'm leery. Sell me. Is what's this going to look like in the next year?
Oh, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. But President Biden is the candidate to beat. President Biden beat Trump by a landslide, is what Trump would say about that number. I do not think that the numbers look good for Trump next year. I don't think that he's going to have the support he thinks he has.
Yeah.
I think people are going to be scared of him anymore, and I don't think that that's not going to have that power. He may try and go President Biden's old, and that's not going to work because people would choose him over Trump, and Trump, by that qualifier, is old as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is, I don't think you're spawning any new Trump voters. I think you're losing them especially as more information comes out. But my concern is a lot of people don't, like a lot of times, it's who shows up to vote that matters. If people stay away, if people aren't enthused and engaged and understand what, I think this administration's been transformative. I think the fact that we're reshoring manufacturing and investing heavily in infrastructure and in reviving labor laws to give workers more power, I think this is a transformational moment. And I don't know that voters get that. I don't know that they understand, because look, I think Democrats have a great message. They just don't have the ability to get it out. They didn't invest in infrastructure to have a megaphone like the right has. So you wonder why people go, the economy's crummy, there's crime everywhere, the world's bad, it's all terrible, it's all bad. Because the outrage machine that keeps feeding them the outrage candy they need.
Yeah, I will say this: the Democratic Party will not be bringing a book to a Twitter fight next year. They are prepared. This is a molding of Clinton people and Obama people and Biden people all together, some of the best communicators in the world. And I believe that it will be a simplified message that is very clear and concise and straightforward. I also think they're not going to play around by letting disinformation spread.
So what you're telling me is when they go low, we're not going to go high.
When they go low, we're going to go high, and we're going to go low, we're going to go medium, and we're going to go everywhere. We are not going to give them an inch. There's nothing that we're going to give them because they don't deserve any of this.
See, this was the answer I was hoping for, Scott, was when they go low, we smash their face in the ground like I was taught as an 8-year-old playing football. Someone goes for your knees, you smash their face in the dirt so they don't go for your knees again.
No, we don't.
That's where I'm at.
But I'll say that, they're not on the same level, but you have to pay attention to what they're doing. It is exactly like the Newsom-DeSantis divide. If you present that this is him and this is him, you're going to see an embarrassment and a person who's a patriot, person who cares about this country, and person who does not, only cares about themselves. And just be clear, I'm talking about President Biden with the person who cares about this country and is a patriot, and I'm talking about the traitor as President Trump. That's the first time I ever called him that, I think.
Former President Trump.
But that is what we're going to see, is we're going to see that divide, but you're not going to see them being able to paint Biden as weak. That's not going to happen because he's not. This dude is with it. The president knows what's going on, has leadership skills, but let's always remember that these are the figureheads. These are the leaders. Who do you want in the administration? Who do you want serving those cabinet posts? I sure as hell don't want anybody from Trump land to be serving those posts, handing millions of dollars to their buddies, doing illegal acts, taking over the DOJ. I don't want any of that. But we need to remember it's not just about Biden and Trump. It's about everybody else. And that's what we need to focus on, plus the staff and everybody else in the White House. We don't want Stephen Miller back at the White House. Boris Epstein, get out of here. Mike Flynn, no way. So it's not just about the two of them. It's about the most diverse administration that's ever existed in the history of this country. And it's about the biggest badass who's ever been in the White House, which is President Biden.
I mean, you don't want patronage back? You don't want the wonders of patronage hires, and you don't want retribution and payback by the former president? Because that's all he's running on. I mean, we're reviving, repealing the Affordable Care Act again. I mean, we're playing all the old hits. I'm just hoping they're not landing.
Well, we took on Putin and Trump in their height. We aren't scared of them now. And that's not going to change.
Good stuff. Scott, as always, I appreciate the time, the work you do. I hope you'll come back and talk with us in our new format over at Free Speech TV, and I hope you'll share some of our thoughts.
Absolutely. I look forward to your new venture, and I'm sure that things will kick off the new year really great.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much. Appreciate the time. Our good friend Scott Dworkin. Make sure you check out the work that he does with the Democratic Coalition. Also, the Dworkin Report, the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, you will find that. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. And of course, if you miss any portion of this program, you can find the podcast. Wherever you get those podcasts, like Scott's Dworkin Report, you can find ours. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You'll listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1966. That was the day that the registered nurses of the Youngstown General Duty Nurses Association walked out of their jobs. Nursing could be a grueling profession, with long hours of physical labor for low pay. In Youngstown, the nurses were frustrated because there were inconsistencies in pay. Some recently hired nurses made more than those who had been working for years. Part-time nurses did not receive the same wage increases as full-time employees. They also did not feel that they had enough say in delivering quality care for their patients. When they asked to meet with the hospital's executive director to discuss their concerns, the nurses were rebuffed. They then contacted the Ohio Nurses Association union and asked for help. Youngstown was a steel town, a union town, and the nurses were ready to join in the local labor movement. At first, the Youngstown Hospital Association refused to bargain with the union. But when the nurses threatened to walk out, negotiations began. After 2 months of talking at the bargaining table, major issues remained unsettled, including pay and union recognition. Fed up, the nurses called for a mass resignation. 305 of the 433 nurses turned in their resignations. 2/3 of them were part-time nurses. They formed informational picket lines outside the hospitals. A federal mediator was brought in to settle the dispute. In the end, the nurses won significant gains. They received a more than 25% raise over 2 years. A grievance procedure was established for the first time, but most importantly, the union gained recognition and the right to bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions for the nurses and their patients. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
In one of their satirical songs, the Austin Lounge Lizards lampoon the ridiculous bigotry of some Christian factions, singing, "Jesus loves me, but he can't stand you." That could be the bellicose anthem of a quasi-religious Republican front group with a very sweet-sounding name, Moms for Liberty. Far from sweet, however, these moms are funded by rich Republicans to be ground troops in the party's culture wars. Essentially, an anti-liberty campaign against people, books, teachers, and ideas they don't like. In the last few years, squads of these moms have turned into political hate groups, persecuting small-town school board members by baselessly accusing them of conspiring to indoctrinate children with pornography, hatred of white people, and liberal thinking. Having stirred up dust devils of division and fear, the momsters ran candidates in local board elections this fall, hoping to take over public schools. But they miscalculated on an essential political reality. Most Americans are not right-wingers, bigots, or Christian nationalists. The group had counted on surprising voters in what are usually low-visibility, low-turnout races. But the extremists were the ones surprised by an aggressive voter pushback against their scheme. Indeed, various surveys show that the GOP's mom wing lost about 80% of its races across the country, even in major swing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. For example, in the very conservative school district of Penridge, Pennsylvania, 5 far-right Republican incumbents were up for re-election. All 5 were swept out, turning the Penridge School Board blue for the first time in years. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help push back against right-wing politicizers of your school district, contact campaignsharedfuture.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I find it interesting, the Washington Post reported someone close to the DeSantis campaign said that people increasingly think it's over. It's a dumpster fire. And you go, you're just now getting around to the fact that it's a dumpster fire, that it's over. It was over before it began for Ron DeSantis. But that thing with Newsom the other night, that was kind of like the final jab. And I don't even know why you would go there. I have no idea, if you're Ron DeSantis, why you would go up against someone like Newsom. I just don't. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on where we are, where we're going, and how we get to where we want to go. I've asked our good friend David Yankovich to come spend a little time with us. He's a digital strategist extraordinaire and a good friend of mine. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
I figured on our last day on terrestrial radio live, I would bring you back and we would have a conversation about how we're going to save the world. And I look at this thing with the DeSantis camp. they're done. Stick a fork in them, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah, not bad for the final segment here. Well, we've got 15 minutes to save the world. Yeah, we've done more with less, right? I mean, the DeSantis thing, man. I mean, the final nail in the coffin, I don't know. I think the final nail in the coffin is going to be when Trump goes who into a microphone. Like, I mean, he's a joke. And last night, it's just like Gavin Newsom said to him, neither one of us are going to be the nominee. Neither one of us are, going to be at the end of this rainbow here. Like, come on. Like, he needs to grow up and get it together. Like, I mean, guy can't even smile, man. Did you watch I'm sure you've seen the videos of, like, you do media training, Rick. I know you've done media training for candidates. Like, that's got to drive you nuts. Like, you can't even smile. It drives me nuts. Just saying.
The guy is just a train wreck, top to bottom. But the reason people love him is he's mean. He hates the same people that they hate. That's the reason he's got any support, and he's willing to use the power of elected office to enact revenge and retribution and payback. This is what Trump's running on. This guy actually has done a lot of that in Florida.
Yeah, but don't forget too, like in Florida, he kept the state open. I'm not giving him credit. I'm not saying anything there, but when COVID was going down, he kept the state open, and a lot of people in business down there are still supporting him because of that. They feel like he saved them in the banking industry and that stuff down in Florida. So it's not just a bunch of, racist jerks that are supporting him. It's a bunch of rich jerks that are also supporting him as well and are doing this. But it's over for him. I mean, he's a joke. His candidacy's already over. Everybody's already bailing on him for money and everything. I mean, he's done. And, now they're trying to push Nikki Haley, on that one. And the donors are going there. And that's another joke. She's not going anywhere either because, all these guys who are taking women's rights away are not going to elect a woman. Sorry. That's just not the way that they're going to do that.
No, excellent point.
Yeah, I mean, where we're at right now, I mean, it's going to be Trump, it's going to be Biden, and we got the battle with the OK Corral at the end of the rainbow here. That's where we're at.
And that's the reality in this, and which is why I have paid no attention to any of the Republican debates. And I guess they're trying to revive some kind of I don't know what, maybe start pulling people from the audience to run for president. Who knows? But my favorite DeSantis story that I saw today was evidently. And this is indicative of a lot of the God-fearing Christian folk. Evidently, DeSantis' staff had to purchase a Bible on Amazon days before the inauguration in 2019 because, according to the report, the staffer said, "Well, they didn't have one. DeSantis didn't have one."
Well, it would have burned him if he touched it. So,
Well, there is that. There is that. I got to get your thoughts on George.
I mean, honestly, does that really surprise you that none of them could quote scripture? I mean, if they could, in the Bible it says, "Don't touch a pig's skin on the Sabbath." All the women are supposed to drive, whatever. I mean, if we went by the Bible, we'd be stoning people left and right, including every one of those jerks. So, they've never even opened up that book. They like to quote from it. They like to talk from it. They have no idea what's in it. And here's something too. For everybody out there, if you want to have some fun, I'm a nerd. Go into ChatGPT and AI and type in all of the Bible and summarize it, and then do an interview with what the summarization of the Bible is. And it is nothing like the Republican Party whatsoever. They have no idea what's in that book. No way.
Again, the Believe folks. I got to get your thoughts on the expelling of George Santos. Where are you on this?
Oh, do you think I'm going to be against it?
No, I mean, look, I don't, and I'm probably getting in trouble for this, but I don't care. I don't know that I would have voted to expel him. I would have voted to ensure that he gets no classified information, that he has no access to things. But I'm still, look, you're accused of something. I still believe in that you're innocent until proven guilty.
I respect that. I do. But this is a guy who has members of his own party coming out and saying that he stole from their mom. You can't.
And that deserves a butt whooping. That's when you take him out back and you give him a good thrashing.
Yeah, the thing is the proof's in the pudding here. This isn't just there's one thing as a political strategist that I can say still scares us. Nothing else really does. The public polling, that doesn't. But the FEC still scares the living hell out of us. If you have a lawn sign that has the wrong marker on the bottom of it, you're going to get fined per lawn sign. That can be tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So we still fear the FEC. With what he's doing there, this is really critical for democracy, that there's still some type of guardrail in place where you can have charges and this can happen, and there still are ramifications when this is going down. And the fact is, I think for Congress, there aren't very many things that we can do bipartisan together anymore. Basically, right now, it's us against George Santos and UFOs. Those are the two things that we have that are still bipartisan, and that's it. I'll take this. And he needs to go. He should have been gone. You know, he's committing fraud openly, and he's, you know, mocking it, and he's laughing in people, you know, other members' faces, and, you know, throwing all this stuff around. Like, the precedent is one thing, but it's also a really bad precedent to leave a guy in there that we know has openly frauded just about everybody that you possibly can to get in that office. So, you know, I mean, it's a tragedy in a sense of what happened for Congress in this, but it's also a kind of a strength of the democracy still, that we still have a democracy here where when things really get bad, we can still, at least there's a sign today that, like, we're able to come together for this at least. You know, and I don't know where we're going to be on Trump or where we're going to be on everything else, but, like, I think at least the Democrats and Republicans in Congress can at least look at each other and say, we did the right thing on this one.
Okay. I think the Democrats helped the Republicans get rid of a problem, and it was their problem to get rid of. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But I'm still of the innocent until proven guilty part of this, because you do know that at some point down the road, going to happen to Democrats, because it always does.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm good with that, because it's 2/3 majority in Congress. You know, and that's what it comes down to. We have, say I'm in Congress, you know, and it's 10 years down the line and everything else, and if there's a 2/3 majority to have my butt removed out of there, I deserved it.
That's an excellent point as well. So when are you running for Congress, by the way?
We'll see. Many years down the line, maybe. Right now, we have 2024, and we have to save democracy. And we got 26 in the midterms to keep saving democracy. So if I ever run, it'll be down the road.
So how do we save democracy when it looks like, I look at Ohio with their gerrymandered maps. I look at Florida with their maps and all the craziness going on. How do we change that?
Well, I mean, you know, got to organize, man. You know, I mean, you and I always say this, but we got to be organized, and we got to get the party to get good information out. You know, right now you're leaving terrestrial radio, you know, because we're not getting enough funding into this stuff. You know, I am in politics right now, and I'm at a crossroads of where I want to be, because we're not putting enough money into social media organizing and fighting back on the disinformation and doing this stuff. Like, we have to invest like the Republicans are investing. It's critical that we do it. They're investing in talk radio every morning. God bless my dad for, you know, to the end of the world. But he woke up and listened to Fox News, going to work, listening to Republican radio. That's where they're getting their water cooler information and talking and everything else. And social media is the other half of this. And that's the two freaking places in this country that we aren't. We're on TV, we're on cable, we're putting up digital paid ads, but we're not on terrestrial radio, we're not organizing on social media the way they are. That's how we have to fight back and get this country going again. And it's not the silver bullet, but it's a big, important piece of this. And that's why we're not getting our comms out there. And that's why we're having the problems we are.
No, I mean, we've had this conversation before. And the sad reality is Democrats don't have a messaging problem. They have an access problem.
Yeah.
They have a problem getting their message out. And, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've given speeches at union events and talked about, you know, this is what we're doing at the program here. This is the access that you can have to tell your stories and all this stuff. And I give these speeches, and only, you know, to have someone come up, you know, if we could just get our message out, you know, and I just, you know, sometimes want to smack people when they say that, because I just told you how we're doing that and what you need to do more of that. Nobody seems to be listening.
I mean, and the thing is when they do listen, we have big things happen. Like, you know, Joe Jacobson from, you know, Progress Action. You know, we had the video in Ohio that, you know, where we got credit for turning 2.7 million people to the polls with one video and it was done on social media and pushing this out. Like, these are the innovative things that we got to do to be able to get the message out for this. We got to talk different. We got to sound different. We got to stop being so canned. And really, for the sake of everything, we have to try to stop being so smart. You know, we're trying to articulate our argument as if we're speaking to, you know, Yale and Harvard people. The average person in this country has a 5th grade reading level. And we're trying to explain the nuances of a global threat between Israel and Palestine, or, you know, North Korea and South Korea, or whatever. And we're trying to use, you know, the language that the average common person can't possibly understand. And there are some things that we just, you know, we have to really get into and communicate better, you know, domestically and everything else. But like, we always are too smart for our own good. And that's what it comes down to, I think, a lot too, is we sound the same, because all of it is, you know, the same buzzwords. It's just like a couple of years ago, the Republicans with our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of this senseless tragedy. You know, like, that's the Democrats now, but instead of saying that, it's talking about like it's not fair that gerrymandering's happening, and we're using the same type of buzzwords on the other side of it. Like we're not getting home to anybody. Like when I'm in Ohio, people tell me, "Don't tell me I'm racist." That doesn't even have any impact on me anymore. Everybody tells me I'm racist, though I don't even hear it because it's not even an argument anymore. It's not persuasive. They hear it all the time. We have to tell them why they're racist. We have to tell them what's going on and how this is happening. Like when Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination was going through, we didn't tell Lindsey Graham that he was a racist. We told him the facts. You already voted against her twice. Why aren't you voting against her the third time? That's how we did the persuasion online. And we got people to see that and forced his supporters to have to respond to that. The party's got to start talking different. They got to stop trying to articulate everything perfectly. And like Doug Jones says all the time, they got to stop letting perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's what's really killing us.
So are you hopeful in the coming year that they're going to grab onto this stuff? Are you hopeful that because look, I'm looking at 2024 with some great fears. Are you hopeful that things are going to turn in that direction, that we're actually going to start doing some of the things that you've talked about?
No,
okay.
Not at all. But they in the party's mind right now, and this is straight up me telling you guys the truth here. They don't see the percentage in social media and digital organizing. They believe in paid media and they believe in fundraising off of social media. They don't understand the impact of what persuasion's doing. There was a CNN article yesterday. The Biden White House is talking about how they are going to go online and fight with the Republicans and basically use X as a fighting ground, which is great. I'm all about the fighting piece of it and everything else, but like that's not gonna get persuasion done. That's not the organizing that they're doing on your side, or that Russia's put all the money into and they've been so successful at doing against us. That we're not going to be doing that stuff. Members of Congress out there still don't know what memes are, Rick. I talk to them all the time and they don't know what a meme is. They don't, like, I've been told social media is a fad and it's going to be gone in 5 years. They don't understand this piece of this yet, and they'll argue with me, and I'm sure I'll get letters and DMs and everything else that they're doing this stuff, but they're not.
No, it's what I hear about terrestrial radio. Terrestrial radio is dead. It's not the future. And you go, maybe not. Maybe it's not the future. It's the now. This is where people my age and older, to be honest, that's the focus of people who listen to talk radio. Those are voters. Those are an important block of voters that sadly Democrats have lost overwhelmingly over the last couple of decades because they did not compete in this space. They did not talk to people, and that's central to this. Look, time and repetition is what Republicans have had over the last several decades to convince working stiffs that we should give tax cuts to billionaires and that somehow it's going to trickle down to them. We literally sold working people that BS story and they bought it.
And volume and sentiment, that's exactly what I say in my world too. It's you have to show up online and you have to keep repeating it. It's the volume and it's the sentiment of what you're saying. It's absolutely critical into getting the word out. And you can't just, pay an influencer to say something 1 or 2 times and think that that's going to get the word through. You need someone to say it 50 times a week, 100 times a week, and be repeating this stuff over and over again. And yeah, it's the exact same thing. And that's why I'm not confident in that part. But I am confident in the piece that we're going to be able to win in 24.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to hear. Last moments of the final broadcast here. I wanted to give you a couple of seconds.
I started off in politics in 2016. I wrote an article and no one cared, and I posted it around. Couldn't get any interviews on it, anything like that. And Rick, you were the very first person in politics to give me an interview and give me the confidence to be able to go and think that I could actually do this job. Since then, I've done a lot of work and gone through politics. I ran for office. I've, gotten in a lot. I would not be here without you and without this show. And if you hadn't believed in the beginning, and if you wouldn't have, helped my career and helped boost me and kept bringing me on to continue to talk about the stuff that I thought was important, maybe even at a time when other people didn't think it was important, I wouldn't be here. And, there's an old school Americana thing that I think of that's really special about what you do, about having someone who's in the grassroots, who's never had an interview, right next to Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or whatever big guest you have on the show that day, and to be able to get that point across. And so, I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably should be the last person to be the guest right now, but for all of them, man, thank you. And what you changed my life, and you changed so many people's lives on social media out there that didn't have a voice or didn't have confidence beforehand. And I know that you're, one of those old school tough guys, and don't get all the feels and everything else, but dude, you changed the game for me, my life, and for so many others. So thank you and thank Carol for putting up with it for all these years. And, just we're going to keep going on TV and helping push, everywhere you go. But yeah, that's my last, man. Thank
That's
you.
nice of you. I appreciate that. Thank you, David. Appreciate the time, man.
Always appreciate you.
I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1955. That was the day that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. With that action, she helped to launch the civil rights movement in the United States. Rosa Parks is often portrayed as simply a weary woman, tired from a long day of work as a seamstress. While that was true, she was also a member of the NAACP, who had been trained in race relations at the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee. Her refusal to give up her seat was a political act. When she was arrested, E.D. Nixon looked into what happened. Nixon was a leader of his union, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. He called the police department to inquire about Parks, only to be told it was none of your damn business. He found a lawyer and posted her bail. Leaders in the black community decided to declare a bus boycott for the following Monday. They called themselves the Montgomery Improvement Association. The first day of the boycott was a rounding success, but many wanted to end the action. At a meeting of the Montgomery Improvement Association, Nixon gave an impassioned speech where he said, "What's the matter with you people? We have been living off the sweat of these washermen all of these years, and you have never done anything for them. Now you can have a chance to pay them back. And you're too damn scared to stand on your feet and be counted." They decided to continue the boycott. In order to keep it going, organizers established a private taxi service to ensure that black residents could get to and from work. For more than a year, they kept up the boycott until they won their fight for desegregation. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Bunch of emails, folks wishing me the best. Roberto says, thanks for fighting for us, the working class. May many doors open after this one closes. And look, the reality is we're not completely slamming the door on terrestrial radio. We're just not doing it live anymore. You will be able to get, a portion of the program recorded, as a lot of radio does. But what I'm hoping, and part of why we're moving in the direction we're moving, is I want to spend more time doing things, getting out of the studio, being able to travel a little bit, being able to do the things that I'm passionate about. I go back to 2013. We did a labor history tour that took us all across the U.S. And, the places we got to see and the stories we got to talk about, are things I'll remember for my entire life. 2015, we did a civil rights tour, same exact thing. So now having the ability and the backing of Free Speech TV and the folks there who are going to give us some help and guidance, this is an exciting moment. This is an opportunity to engage more. We're looking at doing some like I said, Facebook Live stuff, so we keep the interactivity. I don't want to lose my terrestrial radio roots. I think this is such an important medium. I think it's so important to compete in these spaces against right-wing voices. But sadly, the investment, the revenue, the support isn't there. Which is why I'm imploring everyone to support your local radio station that covers working class issues. Stations that do bring a working class message. Support those folks. Support the people who do advertise on those stations, because it's imperative that we have balance. When I started this program, 18 years ago, Labor Day 2005, it was with the intention of adding some balance to the airwaves, of having, my truck driver buddies hear something different, hear the other side of the coin. And I think that's so valuable in a democracy. I think, we don't always have to agree on everything, but we should be able to have constructive conversations. And I like to believe that's what we've been able to do over these 18 years. Sure, things have got heated at times. Sure, things have, got contentious, and that's okay. Like any good discussion, sometimes you're going to raise your voice. But I think we need it. And sadly, what's happened is the moneyed interest in this country have built an incredible megaphone. Through time and repetition, have convinced working people that their interests aren't their interests. I go back to that line. They've convinced working people that billionaires need tax cuts, and that somehow that's going to benefit them through some trickle down mechanism that is just illogical. But again, time and repetition. That's what they've gotten. An anti-government message that has been repeated ad nauseum. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping that someone fills the spaces that we're leaving behind and is able to pick up where we've left off. I'm looking forward to our time at Free Speech TV. You want to check that out, freespeech.org. That's where we will be. That's where we're going to be in the coming year. I'm really grateful for this moment. And it's bittersweet because I do see us moving on and hopefully expanding. But I still love this. I still love this medium. I love radio. It's where we started, and it's near and dear to my heart. So I want to thank everyone, and especially folks like David. Because I did start this program to give people like him an opportunity to have their voice heard, to have working people actually have someone listen. We talked about an email, I think it was yesterday, from William, who said he doesn't believe anybody's listening or anyone cares. The one thing that I can easily say and say with a straight face is, I did listen and I do care. And I think we need to do more of that. Not just here, but in everything that we do. The coming year is going to be really interesting. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a fight. And the central question is do we believe in democracy or don't we? Trump has already told us he is going to be an authoritarian. He is going to exact revenge. It's payback time. And what Joe Biden has done is just shown up and done the job. And in ways that I think are transformational. So in the coming year, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about those frames because they're important. But for now, I appreciate everyone who's tuned in to our live radio program. Folks who have participated, folks who've sent emails, all the people that I'm going to spend the next who knows how long answering. Thank you. From the bottom of our heart, I appreciate it. It's meant a lot to us over all these years. To be in these spaces and to get where we are, and it's because of folks like you listening, and I want to thank you. So I'd like to hear from you. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of this or any of our programs, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. We're going to be doing some really incredible things in the coming year that I'm looking forward to, and I want to hear from you. Again, thanks so much for being here. And for the last time, we'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.